Hi, it's Lori. I'm here today to show you a fun technique using HeatnBond and paper napkins. Yes, these cards were made with paper napkins, or I think they were called guest towels at Bed Bath & Beyond where I purchased the ones that I used. These are the three sets that I purchased to try. I only ended up using the birds and the peacock feathers. But any napkin will work, for holidays, there's always a bunch of them out there. You can see I made that card with that napkin. And another one. And then I'll show you the card I made with the peacock feather. And we're going to make another peacock feather one for this demonstration. First and foremost, you want to make sure that you have your iron on and set it a cotton setting. You want to cover your ironing board. I just used an old pillowcase just to protect it from any adhesive. The first thing you're going to do is open your napkin and decide which part of the pattern you want to use for your card. You can see here I could potentially make 4 different cards with this napkin. Oh, you see my dog there. And I find it easier to cut it in half, but you could do the entire sheet if you wanted. So I'm just going to work with 1/2. Now I have the choice whether I can use that big feather or if I want to use the smaller one, and I think that smaller one's going to work better for a card size. You need to pull your napkin apart. There's usually 1 or 2 extra plies. You need to make sure you have just 1 ply, just the ply that has the design on it. And you're going to put the design face down. Make sure, again, that you only have 1 ply. Now we're going to use our iron set on the cotton setting and just lightly press out some of the wrinkles. And you don't want to spend a lot of time on this. It is paper, so just quickly go over it. Don't let the iron sit still too long. Next we're going to apply the HeatnBond. You'll notice on the HeatnBond that there are 2 sides to it. Here I'm just cutting down the HeatnBond, just slightly larger than my napkin. Okay, so there's a rough side that has the adhesive on it, and then there's the smooth paper side. You want to put the rough side down against the back of the napkin. And again, make sure your ironing board is covered. You will get adhesive around those edges. And you don't want to ruin your ironing board. And just take the iron, keep it moving, but go over it just until that adhesive melts into the napkin. And again, keep the iron moving. My steam setting was on. I don't know that it should have been, but it was. You wonder what that smoke is. And just look and make sure you don't have any air bubbles, that everything is adhered well. I'm going to go over that left side just a little bit more. Again, there's the adhesive that got on my ironing board. That's why you want to make sure it's covered. Now I find it easiest to cut this down to size now while you have the backing still on, it's a little bit firmer and it's easier to get straight edges. I'm just cutting it down to the size. Every project will be different just depending on your decorative napkin and which part of the design you want to use and how big it is. But I'm just cutting it down to approximately the size I'm going to work with. And you can use a regular paper trimmer with this. This is just what I happen to have downstairs near the ironing board. So now, if we've been successful, we're going to be able to adhere this napkin to a piece of cardstock. And I've already cut a piece of cardstock just slightly bigger than what I anticipated my design is going to be. Now, if we're successful, we can peel off the backing. There we go. And you're left with the design with adhesive on the back. You're going to lay the shiny side down on your cardstock. And again, lightly go over it with an iron until the napkin is adhered to your cardstock. And it doesn't take very long at all. Okay, let's go make the card. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is blast this with some gold glitter dust. If you haven't tried this, you need to try it. I like to just, I have this box I like to spray into just to keep my work surface from getting glittered. But this stuff is amazing. This is the gold. On the bird cards I use the iridescent one, but I do like the gold on this peacock feather is just gorgeous. And it is kind of wet, so it will make your paper warp slightly. You can just set it aside to dry. I like to, because I have no patience, hit it with my heat gun. So I'm just going to dry it with my heat gun, and I'm going to put this in fast motion so you don't have to watch the entire process. But you want to keep your heat gun moving, and if you dry it from the underneath as well as the top, it'll keep the paper from warping. It'll keep it nice and flat, and you'll notice I go back and forth. Can you see that shine? It is so pretty. We're almost dry here. Next, I'm going to mat the napkin design just on an 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock. And I'm using my Thermoweb sticky dot runner to adhere it to the cardstock. And I'm going to step away and finish trimming it down. Okay, here we have the matted. So now we're going to work on our sentiment. And I'm going to add the sentiment using a strip of vellum with gold embossing powder. I've already cut the vellum to the size I need. And we're going to stamp the greeting with Versamark ink, and before I stamp with Versamark, I like to use this powder tool, which keeps the embossing powder from sticking where it shouldn't. You can also use a dryer sheet, I have heard, or there's also an embossing buddy, which is a little cotton sack full of the powder. Anything is fine, and you don't even have to do it if you're really careful and make sure that you don't have any extra specks of embossing powder. I'm just lining the vellum up with the grid on my craft sheet and stamping the sentiment. Now I'm going to take a piece of just copy paper to catch the embossing powder so that I can reuse what I don't need. And I'm using this Zing gold embossing powder. I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit over the stamp sentiment. And dust off any excess. And again, that embossing powder just kept from getting little flecks of embossing powder where it shouldn't be. Now I'm going to use my heat gun and heat set the embossing powder, and as it's drying or as it's heat setting, you'll see it turn into a really pretty gold. I could have stamped this directly onto the blue cardstock, but I like the look of vellum. There you can see the finished paper, or the sentiment. I'm just going to wrap that around my cardstock. I'm just going to secure it with a bone folder just to make sure those edges are nice and smooth. And I'm going to secure it to the cardstock using my Thermoweb sticky dot adhesive runner. And now just to tie those two together, I thought I would try something I haven't ever tried before, but I'm just going to use the Thermoweb super tape and emboss a gold strip. So I'm going to apply the sticky strip right between where the vellum and the paper napkin meet. And this is a two-sided tape. The red has a protective lining on the outside which you can peel back and release the secondary adhesive side. I'm just trimming off the ends. And now I'm going to peel off that red protective layer. And that reveals the double-sided adhesive. Again, I'm going to pour the gold embossing dust on top. And I probably should have hit that with my powder tool just to make sure that the embossing powder didn't stick again. But I didn't, so I'm just going to use a paintbrush and try to wipe off the excess a little bit. And that's fine. And I'm just pressing down to make sure that the embossing powder stuck to that adhesive. And now I'm going to heat set the powder. And it goes really quick. You want to make sure you keep your heat tool moving. Now all that's left is to adhere the card front to the card base. And to do that, I'm going to use the Thermoweb Super Tape, since this card is kind of getting heavy and I want to make sure that it stays in place. So we'll just speed this up real quick. I'm going to apply the Super Tape to the back of the card. I'll put a strip on each edge, long edge, and one down the middle. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of extra with my sticky dot adhesive runner in between these strips. And then we just have to apply it to the front of the card base. There we have it. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. There were quite a bit of information. If you have any questions, let me know. I hope you enjoyed the embossing with using the Super Tape and using the HeatnBond on a napkin or a paper product and adhering that to cardstock. And don't forget your glitter dust. It really steps it up a notch. Again, on the bird cards I use the iridescent glitter dust, and on the peacock feathers I use the gold. Thanks for watching.